where the Wernicke area is found in the brain, it receives input from neighboring regions. What does that mean? What could be our regions of the brain? Okay, got our hearing. We've got sight. We've got taste. Got smell. Now, and touch. And so now think about that, okay? Neighboring regions, meaning we're getting other types of input. When do you tend to maybe remember something the most? Okay, you've got some emotion to it. Emma? Emotion to it? Okay. How about if you're learning to do something with your hands at the same time? Okay? And, you know, it's very important because of using different regions of the brain. We're going to find, once again, another gyri that's important. Just like we saw for sensory information, motor information, the pre and the post, okay, central gyrus. This time, we're going to have another gyrus involved, and it's called the angular, at an angle, okay? And it's going to be important to our ability to read and write. In the Wernicke area, we formulate phrases and transmit the plan of speech to what's known as our Broca area. So the goal of the Wernicke area, help me form what I want to say. Create the plan so that when I get to the Broca, Broca is where I'm going to generate the motor program. This is where I get the effect. So it's going to generate the motor program to be sent to the muscles that let me speak. So it goes to the muscles of my larynx, the tongue, the cheeks, the lips, as well as my hands. So this is what is going to help me, hopefully, carry out what I wanted to say. What we do know, damage to either of these areas of the brain affects the person's ability to either, if we have damage, for example, to the Wernicke area, which is creating the plan, but there's no damage to the Broca area, what the person says is nonsensical. All right? In their mind, they have told you something very important. But to us, who are the recipient, we can't make information out of it. If there's damage to the Broca area, but not the Wernicke, they've got their plan, they're good to go, they can't speak it. Well, because of the area of the brain that's damaged, what they're saying to them makes sense. So what they hear themselves saying, it depends on, I guess, like the extent of the damage. It might be like, that's not what I wanted to say, but at the same time, they can't really put out what they want to say. So damage, what they're finding is damage to each of these areas will affect the person's ability for communication. Something else that we know. We have an area in our brain called the affective language area, meaning to give it some type of an effect. It's opposite the side from the Broca, okay? And this is the emotional aspect of language. The emotional aspect of language. Okay, well, sometimes you might be in class and basically the professor will stand up and basically just read the PowerPoint, and the PowerPoint will just flip from one to the other. They never have any type of, fun stuff in their voice, and very flat and monotone. Okay. Okay, yeah. Have you ever had that? Okay, yeah, me too. So it's actually an important area. But we also have, opposite that Wernicke's area, okay, ability to recognize that emotional content of someone else's speech. For example, if we were in a conversation, just the two of us, okay, and I don't know, let's say the topic was about the weather, okay, but at the same time, I'm having a really bad day, all right, and I'll just be like, well, they're saying it's supposed to be snowing. I don't know what it's supposed to do. That's putting a lot of emotion to it that the other person is going to pick up. But the way I'm saying it, it's coming across as very aggressive. Okay? So this is actually areas of the brain that allow us to have emotion to it and at the same time be able to interpret the emotion behind it. Do we have anything today, nowadays, that's really affecting that? Because how do a lot of people nowadays communicate? Technology, texting, emails. And yes, that can cause what's being said to be interpreted wrong. And so that's why, they have all this stuff now about netiquette and all this other type of stuff. So when we are looking at the areas of the brain for language, this is what we know at this point in time, okay? We have our Broca area. Note that this is in association to the motor association side and the motor gyrus, okay? Because it's the Broca area that sends the information to those muscles to move, all right? And then if we look over here, Wernicke area, this is where my sensory information is. This is my association for sensory to the central to the post for sensory, and that's picking up or letting us put together what we want to say and how we want to say it, okay? This is that gyrus that I was mentioning, the angular gyrus that they have begun to associate with speech. And because of where Wernicke is located. Remember how I said it was close to other regions? So it's close to sight, close to sound, close to taste, a little bit to smell, not a whole lot, okay? But our general sensations, okay? So what we do know is that lesions, now when you hear that term associated with the brain, okay, with the, especially with like the cerebrum, whenever we say lesion, that means damage. Now, how do we know that there can be damage to these areas of the brain? Actually, any area of the brain. There's some really cool imaging that can be done now, MRIs. And the reason I mention that, I have a friend who suffers from multiple sclerosis. Any of you ever heard of that or known someone who suffers from it? And what exactly is that disease? What does it do to the person? It will affect their movement, like skeletal, like the body movements. Okay, it's going to affect the different organs of the body.
The myelin gets damaged over time and breaks down.
The myelin is getting damaged. And what that means, if we go back to the structure of an axon, remember, even though we say we have myelinated and unmyelinated fibers, all of them have some type of myelin. Just some of it is completely wrapped, and some of it's just lying in the myelin, okay? And the reason I think about this is because she just went recently for her MRI to check the lesions in her brain, because that means that the myelin is deteriorating in the central nervous system. And depending upon the area of the brain would determine what part of her body is going to be affected. She has a lot of issues with like the cheek areas. And so yes, it does begin to affect stuff such as the ability to speak and so forth. But also, as the disease progresses, it begins to affect their ability for body movement. Okay? Now, the problem with this particular disease is that it's not only affecting what we see on the outside, but it's also affecting viscera because of the connection to the central nervous system. So it's a very, not good disease at all. But think about this for a second. Now that we have looked at these areas of the brain, what this tells us, because of what we currently know, okay, damage to these areas would result in something that's associated or controlled by that part of the brain would be affected. All right? Now, chances are, if there is damage to the cerebrum, this large portion of the brain, depending upon the extent of it, okay, survival is much better than if it's damage done to the cerebellum. Damage done to the cerebellum is most likely going to result in something dealing with the skeletal the muscular movement of the body.